start with the top of the top 40 today. Naspers is up strongly again, over 2 2/3% higher. We're now at 271 Rand 10 on the stock, and that's taking into consideration we hit 250 Rand last week, so a nice return if you took the plunge and bought in at 250 Rand last week. Did you do that?
Hey, evening, Bronwyn. No, in fact, I was very boldly on your show telling people not to buy 250. I was manifestly wrong on that. What we've seen with Naspers is two drivers, I think, largely. Well, three to a degree. One, Tencent in Hong Kong has been bouncing. That stock was under serious pressure, got down to 122, closed today at 136, so we've seen a good recovery there, and that's about 2/3 of their market cap. I think the results in many cases, and Chris Becker said people didn't quite understand it, particularly in terms of Tencent and some of their assets. And then at 250, the market's obviously taking the view that the stock was massively overdone on the downside. I personally thought it would go a bit lower. I thought 220, 230, but the market got in before they got to those levels.
And then most banks continuing the rally that we saw yesterday, but we've got Nedbank that was at the top of the top 40 yesterday, up 4.5%, down close to the bottom of the top 40 today, giving up 1.5%. Is that just a correction in Nedbank, so we don't look at that in the same light as the other banks today?
I think so. We've seen banks not moving overly in sync, and what I mean by that is, usually you've got all four of the big banks up roughly the same number, unless there's particular news around one of them. We've seen a bit of a disjoint in that the last couple of days, and we've actually seen some fair volatility coming through. The banking, the FINI 15, usually a fairly quiet index. We've seen some decent volatility moves, 1.5%, even 2% coming through in that index in the last couple of days.
And if we move on to the likes of Anglo Platinum at the bottom of the top 40, no surprise considering we did see platinum coming down to that $1,503 an ounce level. We are seeing a late rally in terms of the South African market in platinum right now. Just the platinum stocks and where they're trading in relation to the platinum price at the moment, with many speculators out of the market, as metal commentators are saying, with the fundamental price of platinum closer to this $1,500 an ounce level.
Yeah, and I mean, quickly touch on Anglo Plat, had a really a strong day, so I think a bit of correction there. I concur with platinum as a metal around 1,500 being at its fundamental level. I mean, that's the right sort of price, which means that when speculators return, they're probably going to push it higher. Platinum's certainly a metal I like of the precious metals, the one I prefer over the other precious metals, gold being the obvious other one. But if I'm looking at platinum counters, Implats is my preferred over Anglo Plat as a rule.
And then earlier I spoke to Adrian Saville, Cannon Asset Managers, on his views on Sasol. If you're looking for value in the current market, many market commentators are pointing to Sasol as a stock to pick up at these levels. Let's quickly check in on what Adrian Saville had to say.
If you take a business like Sasol, here is a well-established, large company, global footprint. I've spoke about Sasol on a few occasions before and described it as a technology company rather than a commodity business. It has demonstrated in that very low oil price markets it's able to generate profit, and in exuberant markets it's going to print money hand over fist. This is the type of business that I would describe as a business of quality, despite the cynicism around competition issues and so on. So yes, Sasol has made mistakes, but overwhelmingly it's got things right. And what this does is it gives me a business of substance, a business of quality. Now, how much do I have to pay for that business? And if you look at current metrics on Sasol, they're attractive.
And Simon, the Sasol today closing down just over 1%. We are at 278 Rand 40 on the stock. Do you agree with the sentiments expressed by Adrian?
Absolutely. I mean, Sasol's just one of those stocks. I think when you start putting a portfolio together and you need to write down your first stock, I think you can do no better than write down Sasol for all the reasons Adrian mentioned, and I would throw into the pot that what do? They make oil, the most valuable commodity in the world, and in the 270 price range, I think you're buying a really good stock with limited risk. It can go lower, but at that price, and let's take a 3 to 5 year view, oil's going to boom again, and as Adrian says, when that happens, they just become a printing press.
And for the brave out there, Telkom is definitely on the radar screen, but there is certainly a decision to be made as to whether you are going to buy at a cheap price and whether you have the quality in the assets. Again, Adrian Saville, Cannon Asset Managers.
if you look at the case of Telkom, it has very deep value attributes. It trades at about 60 cents in the rand in terms of net asset value. If you include the special dividend over the past year, it's given you a yield of 10%. It trades on a very cheap earnings multiple. So it has all of those value attributes. Does it have quality? This is where Telkom fails. So you have to trade off. In this case, you are trading off very deep value for quality.
So what about that trade-off? Very deep value for quality. Where do you stand?
My view on Telkom, I've never been a fan of Telkom. I think they've had I look at them as ex-growth. Yeah, they've got great assets, but they don't seem to be using them. And to a degree, copper in the ground is an old asset. The world is moving to mobile. I think the big issue with Telkom, and what I would stand back and wait, is who's going to replace Ruben in September. I think that's going to be critical. Who's the person going to be, and then can they put their vision into the company?
And then while on Anglo American, if we completely move sectors right now, looking at the stock today, we are up 0.5% at 273 Rand 45. Anglo American, again, this is one that we've got the market starting to favor and saying perhaps you should pull in, but the stock seems to be going lower and lower. And the big question is, are you going to be presented with a better buying opportunity down the line?
I think two things. I think, yes, you are going to be very possibly presented with a better buying opportunity. I was chatting with someone earlier today, and they made a brilliant comment. They said, you look at Anglo and Billiton, and you look at all the metrics, and Anglo comes up in many cases as the cheapest stock, and then you buy Billiton. And my sense is for a long time being, Billiton is the preferred. It's not necessarily on metrics and fundamentals as cheap, but a preferred better geographic diversification, better product diversification, and some folks who even throw in there better management.
We saw the European bank stress test detail coming out, just a short one. In fact, I think we must have been on air when that detail was released. And it has seen a turnaround in the market, particularly the US dollar, which is now suddenly trading substantially weaker to the levels that we saw earlier. And I'm not sure what it's done to markets globally. Have you had a chance to peruse any of that detail, Simon?
Just at a very sort of highlight level, skimming some stuff, it looked positive. Certainly the market seemed to have liked it. I saw the Dow was responding positively to it. It looked relatively positive, and I think some of that flowed into anticipation, some of the buying in some of our banks earlier today.
And just very interestingly, we've seen gold starting to rally again a short while ago at the $1,195 an ounce level after selling off all the way to $1,185 an ounce today. Do you think that this is the resumption of the bull trend? Is the correction over?
Probably. You speak to all the gold boffins and the technical analyst folks, and they all said to the support was around the 1170 level, so maybe start buying around 1180, and maybe some folks sort of it got that pullback. It wasn't at 1250. You were getting a cheaper price. People jumped in earlier. So does this look like the beginning of the resumption of that bull trend? Short answer, it absolutely does.